Welcome, Chris Evans Radio. I am here with my beautiful wife, Angela Edmonds, for Bro in the Brain, and she is going to fill in for Danny while Danny is out. And I brought her on to speak about mental health and then how we can really take your mind, pair it with your body, and be the best version of you, whether that be on a bodybuilding stage, to the beach, or just a person in general. So, welcome. I am mildly flustered because of how gorgeous she looks. So I'm going to keep it
God.
together. Um,
First of all, I can never compete with Danny. Danny is awesome. One of my favorite people in the world. So honored to be able to sneak in her place for a couple times.
so actually where I thought we would start is a conversation that you and I had a couple days ago while I was making my food.
Okay.
And it's solely centered around like mindset. And I always pick her brain on different scenarios uh, just to try to learn more about what this does. I understand the body really well. She understands the mind at a level that I can't even comprehend. And we were talking about, when people should be digging their heels in and punching back with adversity. And you had a really intuitive thought. You said, Chris, you've been fighting since your birth, and that's just natural to you. Do you remember what you're talking about when I said that?
I don't remember what we were talking about. I remember saying that though.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a little bit of backstory, like I was born 3 months premature. So I literally grew in an incubator outside of my mom, to where I had no human contact for 3 months, or it was limited, I guess. So I think I can tell you, I'll just refresh your memory of what we were speaking about. Is I said, when people are faced with either negative comments or they're like, oh, they get feedback from a judge that's, oh, you need to gain more muscle, or you look in the mirror and you're like, man, I'm just too fat. And to me, I'm like, that makes me want to fight. It makes me want to like go change immediately. Like if I need to gain muscle, I'm gonna eat until I can't see straight. I'm gonna go train until I can't stand up. In my mind, like that's how I operate. If we're at a spot where our family needs money, like I go work my fucking face off, and that's what we do. Where you said like that's not a typical reaction how most people are. So could you explain the dynamics between those two different mindsets and then how can both of them be successful?
Well, I don't think it's not typical. I just think it's not the norm, which is different than what you and I were talking about. I mean, so for those of you who don't know, backstory, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked in a lot of different avenues. Mindset is one of the things that I do a lot of. And specifically, I have been working with athletes and but not just athletes, people who have, addictions or major mental health issues for my entire career and supervising a lot of people um, who do the work as well. So, um, but to go back to that, essentially, for everybody knows what flight or fight means. What I think is not as common is that it comes out in a lot of phases of your life when you're least expecting it. So for you, when someone says, well, you can't do that, or your legs are small, or whatever it might be, for you, that turns into, oh, I have to fix this. I have to fix it right now. And that pushes you and motivates you to get to that next level. So if somebody says you can't do 5 plates on the leg press, you're going to do 8. Because 6 isn't good enough for you because you're always in that constant, I can beat this kind of mode. Specifically, again, we were talking about you, but I mean, I think that's just your personality as an athlete, as a worker, I will remind you and everybody listening to this that when I was 8 months pregnant, you were like, you know what? I'm gonna quit my job tomorrow. So I think that that's just you. That's just your mindset. Where other people are more of, gosh, that judge doesn't think I can do this. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to go do something different for a little while. One's not right, one's not wrong, but it's just about what motivates you and knowing how to work through that. If you're a person who is always in fight, there are sometimes when you might need to pull back a little bit, or vice versa. If I'm somebody who is a flight person, but I really need to get to the next level, then I got to figure out a way to do that, even if my instincts say I gotta run, I gotta move, I gotta go.
So with someone like that who almost gets paralyzed a lot of times because of negativity, what
Mhm.
would you say step one in them beating that thought process is?
I mean, I think with anything in life, it's not just with bodybuilding or
Yeah, I mean, yeah, anything really.
it's really for anything in life. But the first thing is, what is your goal and why is it your goal? Um, over what, a year and a half ago when I was laid off, what I wanted to do was cry for for months at a time and not do anything. But what I did was develop a plan and figure out a way to conquer it. So if you're somebody who is you're intrinsically you're like, I just maybe this isn't good enough for me, you go straight to self-doubt. You have to go back to your why, because that's really what pushes everyone. You start everything you do in life pretty much starts with a why. I want to lose weight. Why? Well, it's because I'm a little overweight and I really want to get in shape. I want to have a baby. Why? Because I really have that maternal instinct that needs to take over. I really want to pass on my legacy. I really need to get a new job. Why? So when you think about it, everything you do in life is motivated by your why. So what is your why? What are you looking for? What are you trying to get out of it? And then you take the first step. And that's what most people get wrong is they try to go to step 15. When you have to take that first step to say, okay, today, and maybe your first step is to make a plan. But you got to get to the first step instead of jumping through to try to get to the end.
That's what yeah. I mean, because at the end, you're always going to end up in well, in my thought process at least, is like make a plan and then begin executing it.
Right.
Like, and both of those groups still have to do those two simple things: have a plan and execute.
Yeah.
And that.
But I think some people get stuck in that.
Oh yeah.
I want to be stronger, but I don't want to work for a year to get stronger. I want to be stronger right now. What can I do right now to be stronger? Or I want to find a job, and it's you want to go straight to it. You don't want to wait, and that's the problem. And I think that's part of our life right now. That's part of the world, right? We're all impatient. What do you do while there's a commercial on TV? You scroll through your phone, you look at social media, you find something else to occupy your time because most people can't sit for 5 seconds and just be with the thought.
I'll tell you what I see on a larger scale is the wheels spinning on trying to develop a perfect plan. So they waste 6 months, 3 months. I would even argue a week where like my philosophy is always, fuck it, I'd rather do something wrong
Right.
and just start. Because in my mind, if I'm starting, I'm going the right way or towards what I want, as opposed to just like everyone's like obsessive about, oh, well, this has to be perfect or it's pointless. And it's just never worked for me. All right, so to the first true question, even though I liked that question and something we had been talking about that I thought was valuable for the people that watch this show, like the first question, and I know you and I disagree on this, which is exciting, is when we're talking about mindset. What are you laughing at?
We disagree on a lot of things, but
Well, yeah, but a lot of times when I have guests on the show, they're always agree with me, and I'm like, no, punch back, please tell me I'm wrong. Um, so when I'm starting a contest prep or a fat loss phase or a masking, it doesn't matter what phase of nutrition or training, but
Mhm.
specifically, let's do contest prep. Um, I've always felt like the ideal scenario for that is to kind of streamline your whole life, where, you know, my work is steady, my body's good. It's not injured. It's not hurt. It's not recovering from an injury.
Right.
I'm somewhere on my peak strength. I've been hammering on my meals. I'm in a good, what I would consider like constant state of living.
Right.
Um, where overall life stress is very low. Like, for example, if you and I were going through a divorce, I wouldn't start a contest prep. For example,
Okay.
I know some people may,
Yeah.
but, or let's say I get fired from my job, I'm not going to start a contest prep. That's for me. I always think like that's too much craziness. Or, if we had like, let's say we had, God forbid, one of the kids die, like that's not going to be something that I would want to start a prep in. Now, if I'm already in
Right.
it, that's a completely different story. But for me, I like to have what I call like my ducks in a row. Everything's lined up pretty well for starting a contest plan. I know you actually are the opposite in
Yes.
terms of the way you think. So
Yeah.
could you explain like the differences in those two thought processes and why your way works for you?
I mean, I think that you like to have everything planned and laid out in very specific manner. Um, for me, sometimes you need something. And so when you talk about like I'm getting a divorce and why can't I start a contest prep? Why is there not a more perfect time? Because at that point, right, everything's changing anyway. So why not jump into it full steam ahead if that's where you are mentally? The problem is, are you actually there? Or are you just antsy and need something to do with your time? Because those are two different things.
Yeah.
If I'm like, you know what, F all of this, I'm going to change my whole life. I'm going to change the way I eat. I'm going to change the way I want to contest prep. I'm going to gain muscle. I want to write a book, I want to get my doctorate, whatever it might be. Sometimes that major life event is what triggers you to be successful. So, because it feels a little bit of the void, right?
Okay.
So when you think about grief, like when you think about grief, everybody handles grief a different way, right? Something major happens in your life and you're grieving. Again, whether it's a divorce or a death or loss of a job or whatever it might be, or you retire. Retiring is, I guess you can also suffer from grief from that too, in a weird way. But when you think about that, it's the end of one thing. As you're going through those phases, why every end of something becomes the beginning of something else. So why can't that be the next thing? Why can't it be the next focus? And I think in the same time as it's your new beginning, it's your way to get past the end.
Okay.
I'm also opposite. If something tragic happened while I was in a contest prep or doing something major in my life, I would halt all of that to finish to deal with whatever was going on. So shots fired.
You just don't double down and do a bunch of shows in a row.
No, I wouldn't double down and do a bunch of shows in a row. I would stop whatever I was doing to deal with whatever that event was. So the same way you deal with that stuff, mid have dealt with tragic stuff twice
Yeah.
in our lifetime. Mid contest prep for me, it would be I would have to be beyond that first before I went back.
So that's always like really interesting, intriguing to me because it's actually flipped
Yeah.
versus where to start versus in the middle. Like,
Yeah.
But do you think you have any red flags that you would warn someone of, hey, now is not the right time to prep? Outside of there being an injury or like an illness, something internally to their body, or is there anything from the psychological standpoint that you would suggest someone like, hey, maybe postpone this until you work through the blank?
I mean, I think there's always that case.
Okay,
Like,
can you give me some examples?
no,
Okay.
no, I can't.
If someone has severe depression,
I think when when you're talking about mental health, it's different for me.
okay.
I don't think that in a manic episode, for those of you who don't know, if you're dealing with a mental health situation where you have very high highs and very low lows, that's not the time to start a contest prep if you're in a manic episode.
Why?
Because it's a rash decision that's not made logically. So that's the other thing. I do believe it has to be made logically, right? If it's because it's a change, then that to me, that's one thing. If it's because it's just a quick spare of the moment, like I've got to do something right now, right now, right now, then maybe it does need to be rethought. Either way, I think you have to think it through. But if you're in the middle of a mental health crisis, that's probably not the time to start a contest prep. I think if you're somebody who's struggled with depression or severe anxiety or suicidal thoughts, you have to really take that into account when you're thinking about a contest prep because it does mess with you mentally. It does cause stress like no other. And a lot of that stress is internal. It's not the external pressures. It's not the gym. Normally, it's not. You might say it's the meal. It's not the meals. It's the lack of social environment with friends. It's lack of being able to please others around you. It's a lack of that social norm that you're used to typically, rather than, well, gosh, I can't eat McDonald's tonight or my favorite restaurant on my birthday or whatever it might be.
I think because logically, a lot of times, like, if you go see someone like you or your doctor, they'll say exercise is great for you. Being on a nutrition plan is great for you. So
Yeah.
a lot of people, I think, rationalize it in their brain and say, oh, this is a perfect time to do a contest prep. But you and I both know that when food deprivation is in play, in my world, when drugs are in play or chemicals, however you want to look at that, supplements, that also takes a serious toll.
Yeah.
And plays a very key impact. And then when you factor in like also sleep deprivation,
Yes.
that to me is like a three-headed monster of why I always say like I'd prefer to be a little bit more in like a stable environment. And I think you're mirroring that because mentally you're saying if you aren't, then that's right.
So I think here's the difference. Being stable is very different than just because you're changing life, your life trajectory has changed doesn't mean you're not stable.
Right. Yes.
If you're getting divorced and it's the best thing that you've ever done for yourself, then why not? It's just a change of trajectory. It's you're still stable. You're single, not with someone. So I think that that's kind of a misconception in some ways too.
Yeah.
But I do think going back to the mentally being stable, yeah, I think that if you're not there, then that's probably not the time. And even if you have ever had any inclinations, any family history of things like depression, anxiety, so again, suicidal thoughts are big, homicidal thoughts, any kind of manic episodes, then you probably do need to really consider whether that it makes sense for you at all. Doesn't mean you can't diet, doesn't mean you can't lose weight or gain muscle or look good at the beach, but it's when you're talking about deprivation and the way you have to be deprived for contest prep, you have to really consider that.
Yeah. And it creates a lot of isolation
Mhm.
where some people, again,
Yeah,
that furthers all those feelings of PTSD, depression,
right.
anxiety, where for someone like me, that actually calms and centers me.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So the next kind of moving along here, like I think, and I just made a post about this on Instagram today.
Mm.
Something you've helped me with over the years of me competing is you've said to me, Chris, you choose your attitude every single day.
Yes.
And something else you said to me that's really impactful is how in the world are you going to let someone else dictate your emotions?
Yeah.
And those are kind of like interconnected in my mind
Right.
and something that I had to mature in as a competitor. And you helped me with significantly because in the early part of my competing when I was with you, like I viewed bodybuilding as like me against the world. I have to fight everyone. I, this is, I'm going to go to a place very, very dark.
Right.
And
Hmm.
I, I used to fall in that weird like mindset that people are in where it's training is going to be everything and I'm going to just block out the world and do this alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really common misconception for a lot of people. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be with you, so I've never been one of those crazy people that think training is therapy.
Yeah.
Like therapy is therapy. There's nothing I do in the gym that's going to heal me. It's just going to destroy me even more. So, in terms of attitude and allowing, you know, we all been around shitty competitors where you
Yeah.
know when their food's low and their cardio is high and all they do is fucking complain. What would you tell someone like when they begin to go down that negative mind space of attitude and outlook, outside of saying, "Hey, you chose this, bro"? What things would you say to them to get through that?
Well, I think, someone said to me a long time ago, somebody that I worked with said, attitude is the father of your actions. And that resonated with me so much and made so much sense to me because, the way you feel, the way you look at things, the way you look at life, the way you look at situations, I say all the time, it's a good thing I have a good sense of humor, right? Because, life throws curveballs all the time. So if you don't have this outlook, like, okay, let me stop. What I was thinking in my mind and what I was going to say, that I stopped myself, but I'll go back and say it. Again, I left a job I'd been at for 15 years to take a chance on a really powerful company that's nationwide. I took a nationwide position, supervising a lot of people, a lot of programs, being able to really help a lot of people with mental health and substance use problems across the nation, not just in a couple states. And when I took that job, it was a lot. It was stressful. It was time consuming. It was working around the clock. It was taking, West Coast calls on East Coast hours. It was and Hawaii calls on East Coast hours. It was a lot. And so when that was my everything. Like my job has always been important to me and has always been something significant in my life and something that I've worked really hard for and been very proud of. And when I was relieved from my position, it was, I was part of the whole program eventually being shut down, but it was hard. And there was a moment where, I was depressed and anxious and, I had been the breadwinner for my entire life. I didn't know anything different. Not that you didn't make great money, you did, but it was a situation that I was really concerned about. And because my self-worth was really tied in that, it was a struggle. And so when you think about but I had two choices. I could let myself fall deeper and deeper and deeper into that depression, or I could figure out a plan and attack it. And when you're thinking about attitude, that's one reason I say, I think I ought to have a good attitude, a good sense of humor about life because, now all these months later, I can look back and joke about it. And, everyone kept saying, oh, this is going to be the best thing is going to come for this. Well, did it? I don't know yet. I mean, maybe the answer is yes. I've had a wonderful year and experience and in a different position, going back to doing some direct service. I'm working with a group of people who I absolutely adore, and who have the same passions that I do. But all of that to say is that when you let yourself become consumed by the darkness, is what I'm going to call it right now, because I think everyone can relate to that in some way, then your actions begin to act like that. You begin to isolate more. You begin to stop leaning on your partner, your best friends, your family, whoever it is you leaned on before. You stop doing the things that you really loved outside of training, or again, whatever we're talking about. This applies to any facet of life, but when you stop doing those things, your actions tell the world and everyone else that they shouldn't want to be around you, because you are in a place where nobody else wants to be, if that makes sense. And so I don't really know what your question was there, but
Oh,
that you asked very
yeah, I
specifically.
know it's fine. I mean, essentially, it's just when you're addressing your attitude, and I'll paint you a really clear picture. Like, and for everyone out there, I have never in anyone's life pushed someone nutritionally as hard as I've done her. So this will
That's
be a
true.
very specific question for you. When I would say I need more cardio, I need less food, and give you the specific plan.
Mhm.
It's very common. I've heard so many people, fuck my life. This is miserable. He's an asshole.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I'm always like, hold on, like this is what you wanted. This is what you're paying me
This is what you
for.
asked for. Yeah.
So how do again, as the competitor
How do
out
you get out of
there,
that?
how do you look at that, even though maybe your natural instinct can just think, oh my word, like I can't do 5 more minutes of cardio. There's no more time in my day, or I'm already starving, and he removed 50 more grams of carbs. I'm going to be even hungrier. How am I going to function at
Yeah.
work? What do you do in terms of developing an attitude and mindset around that?
So again, I think that you have to make that decision right from the beginning. If you're going to start a contest prep, you have to start it being all in.
Yes.
And you have to start again for what's your why? What are you gearing up for? What are you trying to prove to yourself or to other people? And what's your ultimate goal? So I think that when you have that, stop distracting me.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
I'm just looking at my talking points.
when
You told me I had to have talking points. I never have those.
I did, I'm sorry. But here's the thing. When you get a change of diet, there was one point when I was much younger, I got a change of diet, and I literally laid on the floor and cried for 5 minutes, because in my mind there was no way I could actually finish this. Um, and then I got myself off the floor and I just did it. And so I think that you have to, and honestly, from then on, I think never again have I experienced that moment of like, oh my God, I can't do this. You have to stop saying, so I'm sorry, I keep shaking your thing, but
Okay.
um, I, you have to stop saying things like fuck my life, or I hate this, or this fucking sucks,
Yep.
or why am I doing this? If you're asking yourself why you're doing this, you shouldn't be doing it.
Quit. I do that all the time.
You shouldn't be doing it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you're not allowed to have a moment of weakness. It doesn't mean you can't have a moment where you second guess yourself. But when you're talking about, you got to find that why and that intrinsic motivation, what motivated you to start. And again, that's when that fight or flight comes into play, right? Are you going to run and be like, F this, I'm going to gain 50 pounds because I don't want to do this anymore? Or are you going to stick with it, fight through it, and come out on the other side? Part of this, though, is you have to have a good coach. You have to have someone like you and I've had coaches before you. Like, you have to have someone who is willing to work with you, take care of you, who has your best interest at heart, and is not going to respond to you once every other week with a, hey, great job, keeping up. It's a serious contest prep is hard. Not everybody, not everybody does it for a reason.
Yeah.
So you have to, if you're somebody who wants to do it and you find yourself going down that negative path, then you have to find a stop technique. And what that is essentially is that if you're doing it a lot, like a rubber band that you touch, or a sticker that's on your water bottle, or my water bottle actually has, I got this for my birthday, but it has like little cherries on it. I didn't buy it, but it's very much, it has a feel and a texture to it. You have to find something that you can use, a bracelet, earrings that you can rub, whatever it might be, that you can use that as your stopgap. And so when you start going down that rabbit hole, then you do that. Again, touch, it can be tactile, it can be something you smell, it can be something you maybe you immediately go outside for a walk, maybe you get up and get yourself a soda, maybe whatever it is, you have to find something that you can do to replace that negative thought pattern. So once you start replacing that negative thought pattern with something else, if every time I'm like, fuck my life, instead of saying fuck my life, I write 5 things that I am really proud of on myself, then you start to change that mindset and that framework. Um, if you're chronically down on yourself, if you're chronically, we've been teaching young girls this for since Barbie came out, right? That's that new push in the like, I don't know, early 2000s, late 90s, where it's you don't have to look like her. You don't have to have an itty bitty waist. I immediately went to went to Sir Mix-a-Lot there, but you don't have to have 36 double D boobs and a
Oh, don't share
24-inch
that.
waist
Wrong channel for that.
and a 36-inch hips. Shut it. You don't have to look a certain way to have self-worth. You don't have to act a certain way to have self-worth. You don't have to dress a certain way to be whatever. So you get the point of what I'm saying. But that's what I think that you got to look inward and figure out what you can do differently, because if you continue doing it, it's never going to get better. If you continue saying fuck my life, or I hate this shit, or why the fuck am I doing this, or a million other or self-sabotaging because you go to the kitchen and you eat your ass off, or you slack on your treadmill because you just can't do it anymore, it's just too hard. It will always be too hard until you do it, and then you do it and you're like, man, that wasn't so bad.
All right, so I'm going to share a story that you were involved in because I think a lot of times what people see on the internet from me and what I've developed into is very different than who I was,
Okay,
a decade ago.
true.
Um, and you and I laugh about this story a lot, but it was you and I were riding home from the gym, and I'd sent Shelby post lift photos, and he was like, "Yo, Chris, like you don't need a cheat meal tonight." And you and I had been planning that all week.
Yeah.
She had ordered edible arrangements. That's something her and I always did. Like for our free meal, she would order edible arrangements. It was like pineapples and bananas and chocolate and strawberries. Delicious. So you were having that, like, I can't remember if you had to go pick it up or it was shipped to the house. I can't remember. And anyways, we had this whole elaborate meal planned. And at 2 o'clock on a Saturday, sunny, and in my mind at that moment, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I had trained my face off all week and I've been like really looking forward to that meal with you. And I remember you just drove me home and you said, I'm going to give you some time. And you allowed me to just be alone. And then you came back and you put your arms around me like, you can do this. And just simply reminded me, like, this is what you signed up for, man. Like,
Yeah.
you can do this. You've done it for the last 20 some weeks.
Right.
Why can't we do it for 6 more?
Right.
And I think a lot of times people just don't understand the power in that. And I don't know what made you come to that, like, hey, leave them alone, give them a minute, and then come back and just encourage, as opposed to because you could have brute forced it and been like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You want shredded glutes, right? Like, you don't deserve a cheat meal. You're still fat, bro. Like, you could have said that.
Okay.
And you've had those conversations with me as well at different portions. But in terms of that moment, like, I just wanted to share with everyone that I'm not just a robot. And even though I still craved being in shape on show day, like, it can still happen. Like, and just because I had that singular lapse in the overall picture, the macro version of that, like, hey, it's 6 more weeks, it's not a big deal. Like, in that singular moment, I felt very defeated. And then I went there, ate my chicken and almond butter, and we went about our day. And you had your free meal, and I sat there and ate my fish and asparagus.
I was going to say, I think the part you left out there was I got a cheat meal that night. So, however, everybody goes through this, right? I don't believe professional athletes don't have a moment in time where they're like, oh my God, I can't run one more route. I can't hit one more baseball. If I have to pitch one more, inning, my arm is it's killing me. So, I can think of a reverse time that you said something to me, you're not going to eat your diet food. And I was like, fuck it. And I grabbed a piece of our kids' pizza and I ate it. And was
That
like,
was just in spite of me.
it was in spite. I was so angry. But that's, I think that's part of it though. You have to allow yourself to be human. You have to allow yourself to, and I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, right? In one breath, I'm saying you got to let yourself be human and know it's okay to feel like that. But at the same time, you got to figure out a way to stop it or you're going to be miserable. And nobody wants to spend 12 weeks of their life miserable because it's not fun and that's not what life's about. And, if you are doing that, then I'm sorry for you, but let's figure out a way to motivate yourself enough to get over that hump of whatever's going on. And I think that that's just some people again get that diet plan change and say, "Oh, I got this. I'm going to show you I can do this, and I'm never going to complain to you, and I'm never going to tell you how hard this is, and I'm gonna kick this diet and cardio's ass, and I'm going to show up great for the show." And there's other people who are maybe not telling you, but they're like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." And they're crying after you update them and you think everything's great, but inside they're dying. And then there's other people that are like, "Fuck you, why did you send me this? I can't do that. I could barely do the last one." The truth is you can do hard things.
Yes.
The question is, do you want to do hard things? I know you as a coach, you're never going to let someone starve. Never. Even our wrestling son who was on depleted calories because he's a wrestler and that's what you do. You're never going to let someone starve. Are you going to be hungry for a little bit? Yes. Is some of it going to be mental? 100% yes. And you have to recognize that and be willing to deal with that, or you should not start a contest prep. So it's not situational in my mind most of the time, but it is like, are you actually ready? Are you actually ready to make that commitment to be able to be in that situation? If you're not, it's okay. Wait till another time. Well, maybe I need to start after graduation, or I need to start after this happens, or I need to wait till our kid goes to middle school and then we won't have sports after school and then I can do. But the truth is, if you're not ready, you're not ready, and you don't need any excuse to not be ready.
You've always been a beacon of light for me because every prep I've witnessed you go through, either with me as your coach or someone else, like you've always just handled it with what I view as grace and ease, even though the plan wasn't easy. So, I mean, I had a great example of someone I lived with that you just always seemed you would have some moments of weakness, but for the most part, I would say you just presented unfazed. And it was just like a steady decline in fat loss, or sorry, a decline in weight loss, fat loss, how you want to look at that. And then it was show day, and then you kind of ate off the rails for a bit, and then you just find your way back to it when you did.
Yeah.
And you knew when you were ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I think that's true. And it's not because I'm so great at this. There was one moment when I had first started contest prep and Ty was really little. I don't know, 3, 4, 5. I'm not really sure how old he was at the time. He was little, but I was just angry. I was mad. I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." And it wasn't even that I can't do this. I was just angry. I think I was just hungry. I was just irritated. It was not the trend. Do not take drugs. I was just mad. And at one point I was like, I can't, why am I doing this? If I'm going to be this angry all the time, why am I doing this? I don't want to be this way. And I'm not going to let my kid think that when things get hard, you have to be an asshole. And again, I think that at that point I was going through some a job change at that point. And I just all this conversation about attitude and how it really affects you. And I don't know if that's just kind of in mental health, that was what was happening at the time, but that stuck with me so significantly. Because when you see people at work, right? If you work somewhere where you actually work with other people, you know who to talk to and who not to talk to. Because you know who's going to be angry and mad and moody and grumpy and all the things. No one wakes up in the morning and says, "You know what? I'm going to be an asshole today. I'm going to be grumpy. I'm going to be terrible. I'm going to be," no, you don't.
I choose violence is what you say, but that's a
I
different.
do say that too. That's a different conversation. That's a different podcast. But nobody wakes up like that. But I do believe everyone chooses to be like that. And because you have the choice, you can have the choice to inline, flip off the person behind the counter because they messed up your order, or you can have the choice to do it with grace and say, "Hey, this was messed up, and can we get this fixed?" And I mean, honestly, the contest prep is the same way.
All right, so one final topic and then we're done. And I will share with this as a funny story. So she used to always have these really powerful meetings in Richmond with like senators and very high seven-figure executives, and they always what do you call it, celery and water girl.
Yeah.
Um, because you
One
are
of those guys are watching at
you
this point, laughing. Yeah.
so you know you get this because again that's how we met.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a really thing that a lot of people struggle with is how to manage life. And when I mean life, I mean kids, family, work, relationships, and be hungry.
Yeah.
Because as you know, to look exceptional and be low body fat, I've very rarely, and it's a small percent does not fall in this, but you're going to be hungry throughout the course of your day.
Yeah.
Not all day, not 10 out of 10, but you will be periods of hungry throughout the course of your day
Yeah.
in order to achieve a very lean physique. So how do you suggest people handle their emotional status and mental status while being hungry? Because
Yeah.
let's just say I'm hangry, and I'm not talking about like a blood sugar episode. That's a completely different
Yeah.
episode. That's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
different topic. I'm talking about how people are just grumpy because they're
Yeah.
hungry.
I don't know the answer to that. You told me I was hanging on by a thread yesterday. Um, true story. Um, again, I think that you just have to, if you're in a contest prep and you work a job where you're with people or with the public or with whatever, again, I think you have to decide. You just have to make a choice. And so when I was that particular position that you were talking about, I would have to go and we would have dinners and dinners wouldn't start till 8 o'clock at night. And I mean, I remember one night I feel like I ate in the bathroom and with food, chicken in my purse because that's what I had to do, or eating in my car really quickly before I went into the restaurant, or, I always had a cooler with me. I always had my food with me. And that was part of it. And so it was, first of all, you can't let yourself get to that point. If you eat every 3 hours, you got to eat every 3 hours, no matter what that means, no matter what you got to do to get there. Because I do believe that affects you. If it's time to eat and you can't get to food, it is going to affect your mood and your mental stability, if you will. But that was the running joke, is that they used to call me celery and water girl, although I used to drink Diet Cokes. But that's what I would do when they were eating, because I'm a social person. I am not an introvert. I feel like I need to mingle and talk to people. And if everyone else has a plate of food, I have that feeling that I need to have that plate of food too. But I was at that point, I could eat celery and walk around and not feel like I was doing anything that was off the rails. Now, meanwhile, everyone else is having, wings and dip and, stuff like that. But I think that if you find yourself in that situation again, you have to just, I mean, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, and that might mean you just suck it up, buttercup, until you can eat. And there are lots of times when I talk to people and I'm not in that bright headspace because I know I need to eat, or it's time to eat. But you just got to figure it out. And because you are suffering doesn't give you the right to make other people suffer around you. And so you have to figure that out. If you can't control that, then you don't deserve to do this. Like you have to figure out how to make it work. And you don't have to kiss everybody's ass and you don't have to be nice necessarily, but you have to figure out a way to be cordial and to be civil and to not let your emotions affect other people, or your hunger or your choices in life, your life choices affect other people around you. Now, maybe that's just a personal opinion. Is there a mental health way to cope with it? I don't know. I mean, we can look at therapeutic ways to do it, but I mean, again, it's about that whole, what's your why, and what are you striving for, and what are you going for? And if my why is that I really want to be a IFBB pro one day, or I want to be a model on the cover of Sports Illustrated, or whatever it is, Men's Health, you might not want to be on Sports Illustrated, but you might want to be on Men's Health. Then you have to remember that. And sometimes just sitting back and taking a deep breath and saying, visualizing that point of walking across the stage and getting that trophy, visualizing your next workout. How are you going to get better? What am I doing to get better? If you have that athlete mindset, then that's what you're doing. You're saying to yourself, I'm going to get better, and this is how I'm getting better. And part of it is going through this suffering right now, because on the other side of it, that's where my goal is.
I mean, I think you and I've always done a good job of distracting our brains.
Yeah.
whether that be for a dog walk, we'll binge watch a TV show,
Yeah.
we'll have alone time together.
Shopping.
Yeah, yes. I mean, play golf. Dax and I will play Fortnite. I mean, him and I play 3 games of Fortnite, and 2 hours are gone, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, time to eat. Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, so I think there's definitely strategies. I mean, I never drank diet soda before you, and you're like, hey,
100%.
bro, you can have one of these. I'm like, oh, I never really considered that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, there's definitely things you can do. In my mind, in terms of physically doing things, that's not more mental. I just like to just distract my brain. If I'm working, I
Yeah.
mean, I'll melt 2.5 hours and it's like, oh shit, I'm gonna hurry up.
It's
I'm gonna
time to
be
go.
late for a meal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's plenty of times where you hear me say, God, I hadn't eaten in 3 hours and I have to get up
Right.
from my computer and go in there and make me some food. So, I mean, I think one final thing I'll say before we end this is I cannot remember who said this, but your kids didn't choose for you to be a bodybuilder.
Correct.
And
And normally neither did your wife or your parents or your
correct.
best friend.
Do I think Daxon thinks it's cool that I'm bigger than most dads? Probably. But at the end of the day, like it doesn't factor in his day of
No.
it's do I love him? Do I come to his sporting events and coach his teams? And does
Yeah.
he get cool presents? Like, and do I take care of him? Like,
Right.
so I think a lot of times people forget that when they're so caught up. And that's why this sport is dangerous, right?
Mhm.
Is because it makes you very narcissistic.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, oh, my meals are more important than everyone else. And I'm like, probably not.
Right.
They're
Right.
more important to you, but
Yeah.
not everyone. And I mean, again, I think you've been able to witness me mature through that
Right.
process.
Yeah.
But I think part of the thing that helped me when I was younger was I just worked so damn much with clients, and it was like
Mhm.
client, eat, client, eat.
Yeah.
Where now it's like if I'm hungry, I have a little bit more like mental free space, even though I'm in front of my computer.
Right.
And I think people that have jobs that are similar to mine now, where they aren't, say, a construction worker, where they're doing something manual and physical, which I think helps a lot.
Yeah.
Even though it's a
Agreed.
more physically demanding job,
Yeah.
the time melts.
Yeah.
Like if I'm throwing mulch with my dad or mowing the grass, like we can throw 2 hours. I'm like, oh hell yeah, in the truck, time to eat. Where if I'm, say, behind the work my desk doing computer work and I'm just sitting there, my stomach's growling, it's like, oh man, that spreadsheet's not quite as attractive.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
So is there anything you want to? I will tell people. So the next one of these, we're gonna do 3-part series. This is the first one. It's kind of like the intro of where to have your mind through the beginning phases. The next piece is going to be like peak week and contest day itself, how to manage those emotions and stress and self-doubt. And that's where I really want to dig in with you with negative self-talk. And then the third piece is going to be post-show when most people just fall off the rails nutritionally because they don't have a goal anymore. Their next show is so far in the future that they don't understand why chicken and rice is probably the right answer as opposed to Chipotle or
Right.
Burger King, fill
Yeah.
in the blank. So is there anything you want to kind of wrap up on or any like major piece of advice you want to kind of give people through the beginning phases of contest prep or a diet that has really helped you in the past?
I think that I don't know if I have anything that's really helped me in the past, but what I would say is again, just kind of maybe even to recap, is one, make sure you have your why. What is your reasoning? And sometimes it's just because I want to see if I can, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be this detailed, thought out, written down plan. It just has to be a it just has to be it honestly it's truly specifically to you, and it's personal, and it should be something that you can recall when you need it, for when times get hard. Again, the second thing is practice choosing your attitude prior to going into a contest prep. If you're a jerk to people pre-contest prep, you're probably going to be 10 times the jerk you are now when you're 10 weeks in. So just know that things are going to get worse before they get better, and prepare yourself for what is going to happen when you get if you get to a point where you feel like you want to stop, and what's going to keep you going. So finding those few little things that are going to help you from the start, with your plan and moving forward. So again, I don't know if there's anything specific that I've done that has worked. Obviously I'm not an IFBB pro. So however, my life took a very different trajectory, and I'm okay with that and where it is right now. So it's all about you, and finding that why, and finding that goal, and finding your way to move and get started. And then we'll kind of talk about all the rest. Finding that stopgap when your attitude starts failing you. What can you do? And again, you don't have to go out and spend money and shop like we said, but do you have a show you want to binge watch? Do you have things in your Netflix list that you're going to watch during a contest prep? I always have good stuff in my Netflix list. So if anybody needs a suggestion, but finding those things like that from the beginning will actually help you when you get into that point of kind of the next phase that we're going to talk about, which is about confidence and that sports mindset and how to fix your mindset when it gets to the point where you are struggling significantly. Kind of today, we're just talking about surface level stuff, which is why I don't have anything great to say, but it is about that, what's next and how you're going to be able to handle it.
I will say this whole two minute horn for a second here.
Do
What
it.
you just said about spending money. In the past, you and I have been so horrible at this. Like we go on a hard diet and we're like, okay, cool. Like I want some Amazon on the porch every day.
Yeah.
Or like let shit, both of you and I think bought new cars.
I didn't buy it. Oh, yes,
you
I
didn't get
did.
the,
Yes, I
yes,
did.
you did your black Jeep.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Okay. So
My favorite Jeep.
um that's something I haven't done this time
No.
that I'm very proud of
Yeah.
is I have not bought anything outside of need
Yeah.
for since January. And
Yeah, you've done
I'm
that.
I'm very proud of that. Normally I
Are
have
you in a
like
contest prep?
yes. You don't see you see how good I am? You don't even know.
Well, I knew. I didn't know if the world knew.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've announced that. So like normally I have like boxes of Iron Rebel and
Yeah,
Gasp
that's
and Amazon's out here every day. I'm getting kitchen appliances and probably have 6 pairs of shoes and
I wish you were a kitchen appliances.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. It's more like
Yeah,
kitchen, like
I know what you mean.
pots, pans,
Yeah.
spatulas,
Tools.
rice cookers, yeah, all that kind of cool stuff. Lifting equipment, dear God, how much stuff I spent.
A lot.
Yeah. And I used to use that as a tool of like, okay, cool, like it feels like it's Christmas every day. So that's gonna be like a self-soothing technique for when I'm hungry. And this I'm like, well, why am I gonna use that as a crutch?
Well, I think you're moving into kind of that next phase though. Like there are some people who have had obsessions with like, I don't know, Ben and Jerry's Instagram accounts, for example.
Yeah, that's me.
Dunkin' Donuts or,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of moving into that next kind of conversation about kind of your mindset right as you get up to the show and what to do, about stage presence and things like that. But also that hits on the rebound on the other side.
Oh yeah.
So
I think what I'll end with here is something very important. I think a lot of people get self-sabotage because when they start a plan like this, they have to do a couple things that make them feel really uncomfortable. You get on a scale and it's like that is such a definitive number. So let's say I get on the scale at the peak of my all season and I'll give you my exact number. I was 258.4. A lot of people that like discourages them, like, holy shit, like I have to lose all of this weight to get in their mind, like to the end. Or they take their photos and are like, I cannot stand the way my back double bicep looks, or the way my front bikini shot looks, or from the back, why don't my glutes like sit high enough anymore? I worked the piss out of them this all season. And they get to a point where they just go down such that negative route. And what I'd really encourage you to do is something I think I've done very well throughout the course of my bodybuilding and football and school and work. It will only be that bad today. And as long as I do with my action items in the right direction, that number on the scale will improve, whether that be up or down. My body fat will go up or down based upon what I wanted to do. My muscle will go up based upon what I do. And then in terms of my photos, all I have to do is follow the plan and those will get better. It may take many more years than I ever anticipated. I didn't think it'd take me 20 years to get this big, but that's what it did. And I think a lot of times people fail with that because they see their starting photos and starting weight and they get so discouraged.
Yes. And and I also want to say this, if you hate yourself prior to starting, you're going to hate yourself 12 weeks in, 24 weeks in, 3 years in, it doesn't matter. So that's the first thing you got to fix is that self-love, self-confidence, that intrinsic motivation to, and honestly, it's just liking the person that you are. And if you don't have that, then this isn't going to fix it. And we need to talk about other things that are going on and how we can, I say that as a therapist, but things that you can do to kind of get over that. But I think you're right. I think there are lots of people that start, but again, today's going to be the worst it is.
Yeah.
If you're training for a marathon,
Yep.
today's the hardest it's going to be.
You're the slowest you'll
and
ever
the
be.
slowest
Yeah.
you'll ever be and the
Yep.
hardest you'll ever breathe. And
Yep.
it doesn't mean you won't be sore and you might have some small setbacks, but today is the worst it's going to be ever. So finding out that, knowing that going in, I think helps. But again, you gotta know you got to know what you're doing it for. And again, it should not be to fall in love with yourself. And if it is, we need to have a different conversation. I started a contest prep once because of a girl on the cover of a ad that I was like, damn, she looks like such a badass. I want to look like that. Like, what? And it was fine. It worked.
And
I
it
mean, that was
worked.
my why. Like, and
Yeah.
it was great, but
Yeah, you saw that ad, you're like, fuck, I look
I
like
could look
this.
like this.
Why can't I do this? And I'm like, you can. And you're like, okay, cool, tomorrow
But
it is.
but it wasn't because I looked in the mirror and I hated myself.
No,
It wasn't because I didn't want to.
no.
It was because I thought, man, that looks really cool. I want to try to do that. And again, if you hate yourself, you hate the way you look. Hating the way you look is very different than hating yourself.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So if you hate the way you look and you just want to make that change, that's one thing. And that's, I think, to me, that's a good motivation to start. If it's I really hate myself and I'm doing this to fix me, then that's a mental health thing that we need to focus on.
I think that's probably where we start next time.
Okay.
Because I don't see what the world sees. And I think a lot of people experience that on both ends of the spectrum. I've had clients, I think they look like Mr. Olympia and they are horrible.
Yeah.
And then I've had people who look incredible and think they don't even belong in a regional show, who are pros.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's where we start next time.
Okay.
So until next time, Chris, Angela, we are done.